Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. The dragon Qin dived into the lake and stirred up waves. On the lake, the Daoist immediately hurried over with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Shaking it towards the lake, the numerous threads scattered down like a giant fishing net, trying to catch that dragon Qin in the lake. Rumble. The surface of the lake trembled violently, and the Daoist gave a grunt. Only the handle of his horsetail whisk was left, and he knew he wasn't a match for this dragon Qin, thus he immediately turned and ran while shouting, "Demon, you guys dare to bathe in the Jade Dragon Lake of the royal family, and even dared to beat me. Just you wait to be executed." Not long later, the scholars of Imperial College walked out from Hall of Pure Yang and towards scholars' residence. Today, it was Daoist Lingyun teaching, and what Hall of Pure Yang taught was the path of cultivating qi. Daoist Lingyun was widely known for his profound cultivation, cultivating his qi into the level of pure yang. Before the numerous scholars could even return to scholars' residence, they all stopped and looked back in astonishment, freezing on the spot. They only saw a ridiculously huge red fish flying through the air. There were red scales on the body of the red fish, and on its head were dragon's horns. This was because after absorbing the qi of the 9 dragons here for many years, the fish head had started to turn into a dragon. It was like a half fish half dragon, that had a mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth, looking extremely fierce. However, now this huge fish was being restrained by a few vital qi, and couldn't move at all. A demon wind was carrying this huge fish towards scholars' residence, causing all the scholars to be dumbfounded. Behind this huge fish was an even larger dragon Qin, that was running and shaking off the water on his body at the same time. There was also a white-colored fox, that was standing on the head on the dragon Qin, raising demon wind to carry the huge fish. That dragon Qin rushed into scholars' residence, and threw the huge fish into the courtyard of Academician Qin with a thump. The little fox then scampered into the courtyard and shut the doors. A scholar muttered, "That fish seems to be one of the fish kings in Jade Dragon Lake. It's called red dragon carp, and it's an imperial cuisine that the emperor treats the civil and military officials during the New Year feast." A scholar beside was also in a daze as he muttered, "Last year, my old father was indebted to the emperor's benevolence, and had a taste of the fish soup on the imperial dragon feast. He came back exclaiming endlessly, and even kept telling me it was a worldly delicacy until now. However, that red dragon carp was only a foot long. This one." Before the other scholars came around to their senses, they saw the door to Qin Mu's room opening up again. This white fox scampered out again, and looked around before running to a mulberry tree. She then spat out a demon wind and chopped down the mulberry tree. She then controlled the demon wind to turn into curved blades, to chop the mulberry tree into firewood before bringing them back into the courtyard. The little fox took a few trips, and even carried the trunk of the tree back into the courtyard. Billowing smoke then came surging out from Qin Mu's courtyard. It was obvious that the little fox and the dragon Qin was currently raising a fire to roast the fish. The scholars looked at one another and Chuting muttered, "That's the ambition tree planted by monk Qingshan, the directorate of Hall of Azure Yang. It's a tree planted to motivate scholars to seek knowledge." Not long after, the delicious fragrance spread throughout scholars' residence. Saliva started flowing out from all of the scholars' mouth. The fox and dragon Qin this abandoned person had brought over, killed the fish king in the drinking grounds of the royal family before chopping down the ambition tree that monk Qingshan planted to use it to raise fire for roasting the fish. This act of recklessness, are they trying to rebel? "Young master, how's the taste?" The youth and the fox's conversation came over from Qin Mu's courtyard, and they heard Qin Mu saying, "Still okay. It's just that it wasn't marinated, thus the flavor wasn't soaked through." It's best to marinate a fish for a whole day, so it would be crisp, fragrant and tender when you eat it. This fish is pretty huge. Where did you get it from? From the lake. So I see. I once fished with Grand Chancellor beside the lake and saw a few huge red fish. However, we only caught a 9-dragon carp, which was quite small. However, the flavor of the soup was very delicious. It's pretty good of you to use mulberry wood to roast the fish. It gives off sweet and sour fruity taste of the mulberry. All the scholars in Scholars' Residence had an expression of rejoice in his upcoming misfortune. Chu Ting snickered. Academician Qin is dead meat. In the courtyard, Qin Mu prodded the thick wooden skewer to rotate the red dragon carp, and below was a vigorous flame, which was the mulberry flames controlled by the dragon Qilin, roasting the huge fish tender on the inside and crisp on the outside. The dragon Qilin controlled the fire to let the heat seep into the meat and bones of the huge fish. The mulberry wood gave off water vapor, thus there was a smoky flavor. Hu Linger then controlled the wind to let some of the smoky flavors enter the meat of the fish. They then stuffed numerous mulberry leaves, onions, and ginger into the stomach of the fish. In the stomach of the fish was tender fish oil, which sizzled when it dripped onto the fire as they roasted the fish. The fish oil gave off a smoky smell when burned, raising their appetite hugely. When the entire fish was cooked, Hu Linger immediately controlled her wind blades to slice off the meat from the fish belly. The meat here was the plumpest. Her knife work was very good as each slice of fish was precise. At the same time, she also controlled the plate to let the slices of fish fall onto the plate. Each slice of fish was crystal clear, and the slices looked like pieces of tender jade white fat from mutton. Qin Mu suppressed the fire and lowered the intensity of the fire. The human, the fox, and the dragon Qilin sat beside the bonfire and ate the roasted fish. Qin Mu's heart slightly moved when he remembered a weird technique in great educational heavenly devil scriptures, which was called spirit returning pill great supplement technique. He immediately executed his vital qi to circulate this technique to speed up his digestion. Soon his stomach became empty, thus his mouth continued with eating the roasted fish around the bonfire. The name of this technique was weird and the technique itself was even weirder. The main method of cultivation for spirit returning pill great supplement technique relied mainly on eating. This technique could transform any food that reached the stomach into energy, or even vital qi for the body. This helped to strengthen one's body and raise their cultivation, thus it was called spirit returning pill great supplement technique. Now that Qin Mu's body was so skinny, he needed to replenish the energy he had exhausted in his body. Now that there was a ridiculously huge roasted fish in front of him, he could use this technique to supplement his body. This fish was a unique breed after all. Living in Imperial College for so many years, it had absorbed the qi of the 9 dragons, thus it was firstly delicious and secondly, its meat was nutritious. Now Qin Mu's body was exhausted. By executing this weird technique, the food in his stomach was immediately digested into nutrients, which were absorbed by his whole body. His shriveled muscles also gradually bulged, and even though it was very slow, Qin Mu reckoned his muscles would grow back if he finished eating this 10 yards long fish. Hu Linger couldn't stuff herself any longer, and the dragon Qilin used to eat scarlet fire spirit pills, thus he didn't like the fish meat very much, and stopped after a few mouthfuls. Only Qin Mu continued to sit there eating to his heart's content. Suddenly a knock came from outside, and Hu Linger dragged her bulging tummy and ran to open the door. Wei Yong walked in with his nose twitching and smiled. "It's just the time for lunch and I smell a fragrance coming from Brother Qin's place, thus I've come to ask for food." The stone dragon lion at the mountain gate has come to life. "Little fox, how did you get even fatter than me from eating?" Hu Linger gave a snort. Wei Yong then looked at Qin Mu, who was sitting beside the bonfire, and cried out in astonishment, "Little fox, did you borrow Qin Mu's male force to strengthen your feminine health by sleeping with him?" "Brother Qin, How did he become so skinny? Hu Linga was furious and anxious. I haven't got a chance to do it. Don't speak nonsense. If you didn't do it, who did? Wei Yong was bewildered. I knew that there would definitely be a problem when Brother Qin asked where the cat house was the moment he entered the capital city. Your body has become unable to tolerate as expected, am I right? Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry and invited him to sit down. Wei Yong didn't hold back and tore off a huge chunk of fish meat. He tasted it and the meat was so slippery that it slid straight down his throat, nearly causing his tongue to slip into his stomach as well. He couldn't help being surprised and delighted as he exclaimed in admiration. He then spoke with a low and muffled voice. The directorates are all not very pleased when you haven't attended their lessons for the past few months. They said stuff like Imperial Academician being ignorant and incompetent, that the Emperor shouldn't have raised your ranks. That's right, what happened to you? How did you become so skinny? I had made a mistake in my cultivation, and almost lost my life. Qin Mu said, lucky I discovered just in time, and now I'm replenishing my energy back. Wei Yong smiled, you have pretty big guts as well, to actually cultivate recklessly. I'm also an imperial scholar now and have some position in Duke's Manor. What pills do you need? I can grab some from Duke's Manor to let you supplement your body. Qin Mu shook his head and said, when I finish eating this fish, my body would be able to recover, and there would be no need for me to consume spirit pills. Do you know? Chancellor Ba Shan and Grand Chancellor Ji Yu had fought each other, and got each other all blooded outside the capital city. Even the emperor was alarmed. Wei Yong had a burp and said, my father went to mediate in the quarrel along with other first-ranking high officials, and only then did they stop fighting. I went out to make some inquiries and heard that the emperor had called them both over to give them a harsh scolding. Only when I finished asking around, I came back to freeload a meal here. Before you came back, Chancellor Ba Shan had found me and said he wanted to bring me out for an experience, I reckon. Brother Wei, don't talk while eating. Not long after, Wei Yong, this chubby youth, had grown even bigger, and he couldn't eat anymore. However, he still saw Qin Mu continuing to eat heartily, and with each piece of fish going into his stomach actually didn't bulge at all. Wei Yong was amazed. When he saw Qin Mu's skinny body expanding out, as if he was filled with air, he gave a pinch and found there were all muscles in his body, making him even more astonished. When this huge fish had been completely finished, only a huge fishbone that spanned up to 10 yards long was left. Qin Mu's body had recovered to normal and seemed to be even stronger than before, making Wei Yong incessantly envious. Where did you buy such a delicious fish from? Wei Yong's mouth was still itching for more, but he just couldn't eat anymore, thus he asked. I have never seen such a huge fish in the market of the capital city, nor have I ever eaten such a delicious fish. I definitely have to buy a few more and give special attention to them. Qin Mu said indifferently, fished out from Jade Dragon Lake. Wei Yong stared with his eyes wide open and asked immediately, which Jade Dragon Lake? The one in our Imperial College. Wei Yong gulped and asked with a trembling voice, our Imperial College's Jade Dragon Lake. This fish is one of the fish kings in Jade Dragon Lake. Qin Mu looked at Hu Linga and Hu Linga nodded her head. I asked Big Dragon to catch a huge one, this one that he caught was the biggest. Wei Yong's expression turned ashen, and he saw the mulberry leaves and branches that were scattered throughout the entire courtyard. He then asked again with a trembling voice, when I came back just now, I had seen the ambition tree in Scholar's residence left with a stump, could it be? That mulberry tree is called Ambition Tree. Hu Linga said in astonishment, the tree even has a name. Wei Yong's face turned ghastly white, and he walked shakily and muttered in a daze, chopping down Ambition Tree to use it to roast the Fish King of Jade Dragon Palace. Even if I've multiple heads, it still wouldn't be enough for the Emperor to chop off. I've never been here, never been here. A fox demon and a dragon head lion is creating havoc in Jade Dragon Lake. Not only did they bathe in the lake, they even beat you up. Jiyu Linwan had just returned from the palace, and the Daoist, who was guarding Jade Dragon Lake, came forward to complain. Jiyu Linwan's heart couldn't help trembling violently as he cried out, "The Fish King among the red dragon carps was captured away by that dragon lion. Whose fox demon and dragon lion have such huge guts? I have assumed this position for just a month and such a thing happened. Who is trying to make me wear tight shoes?" Before he could digest this news, another person came to report. Grand Chancellor, the fox raised by Academician Qin of Imperial College, had chopped down Ambition Tree and used it to roast the fish. That fish seems to be the Fish King of Jade Dragon Lake, which got roasted and eaten. Imperial Academician Qin and Imperial Scholar Wei Yong are packing up the fish bones now, trying to get rid of the evidence. Jiyu Linwan couldn't help being surprised and delighted. This brat. I was worrying that I had no method to create difficulties for him. Now it can be said that he had delivered himself to my door. This matter is enough for him to be beheaded 100 times. Now B.A. Shan, that idiot, should be speechless. He went into high spirits and immediately stood up while saying, "Let's go, follow me to arrest them. We need both material evidence and witness testimony. Just send them under escort to Temple of Justice to be interrogated by the official there, executing his whole family. We'll then send a memorial to the Emperor, reporting to him about this matter." What about the scholar called Wei Yong? Arrest him as well and punish him together with Qin Mu. Jiyu Linwan smiled. I was still saying who was making me wear tight shoes, but now as I see it, this pair of shoes ain't tight, but just right. Jiyu Linwan and the rest barged into Scholar's residence, but they didn't find Qin Mu in his courtyard. There were only a fox and a dragon Chileen who was snoring. Jiyu Linwan woke up this dragon Chileen and asked, "Where the brat with the surname Qin?" Dragon Chileen raised his head and took a glance at them before replying slowly, "He was still here just now. People from the palace came to invite him over." Could it be that the emperor had already known about this matter, therefore, he had summoned him into the palace to behead him? Jiyu Linwan chuckled. This brat still has my junior protector sword. Beheading him is also letting him off lightly. What are you guys spacing out for? Arrest the fox and the dragon Chileen. I'll be entering the emperor's palace and personally see how this brat dies for myself. After he had finished saying that, he hurried away. The few chancellors that came with him and the Daoist guarding Jade Dragon Lake immediately made use of a chain to chain up this dragon Chileen. Hu Linga wanted to run away, but she was also captured. Jiyu Linwan rushed to the palace energetically and requested to meet the emperor. After a moment, a guard reported, "His Majesty is at Imperial Garden, may Lord Jiyu head over there." Jiyu Linwan was astonished, beheading the Qin brat in Imperial Garden. His Majesty seems to be really angry. When he came to Imperial Garden, he heard laughter coming over and Jiyu Linwan was bewildered. He walked over and saw Emperor Yang Feng help Empress Dowager by the arm while a few officials followed behind them. Qin Mu was behind Empress Dowager on the left, saying something which made Empress Dowager laugh. Emperor Yang Feng saw him and waved his hand to summon him over. He then asked warmly, "Official, what are you here for?" Jiyu Linwan hesitated for a moment and said, "Academician Qin let a dragon Chileen jump in Jade Dragon Lake to catch the Fish King before eating it. Jade Dragon Lake is the drinking ground of the royal family, and red dragon carp is an imperial cuisine of the royal family. For Academician Qin to be so impudent, this is a death crime. I don't dare to hide it, therefore, I'm here to report this to the emperor." Something like that actually happened. Emperor Yang Feng looked at Qin Mu and asked, "What does official Qin have to say? I'm a person outside the sphere of civilization, and didn't know about the rules of the capital city, therefore I've been rude and impetuous. Qin Mu said, I didn't know that Jade Dragon Lake was the property of the royal family, and didn't know that I couldn't eat the fish in the lake. I am deeply guilty, and may your highness deal with me. This is a death crime. Emperor Yangfeng looked at him and said, even though I recognize your worth, the law is law. How do you want me to deal with you? Ji Yulinwan smiled, Your Highness, according to the law, you will have to execute his whole family. Empress Dowager smiled, Emperor, I also think the little divine physician should be beheaded. Emperor Yangfeng was slightly stunned and smiled, Why does mother say such a thing? Empress Dowager walked forward calmly and said leisurely, Of course he should be beheaded. If you don't execute little divine physician, how would the world know that the emperor value a fish more than a human? If you don't execute Academician Qin, how would the world know the emperor value water more than a human? Only when you execute him, would the talents in the world know that the emperor would execute a reputable divine physician that has cured me just for a mouthful of water and a fish. Only then would they know the emperor is an incapable ruler. Emperor Yangfeng laughed out loud and waved, Lord Ji, you shouldn't bother me for such trifles. Retreat. Ji Yulinwan was bewildered, this. Retreat, retreat. Emperor Yangfeng waved his hand and said, You didn't guard the Jade Dragon Lake properly, but I won't punish you for your crime. After all, you are new in Imperial College. What you have done today has already made my head ache. You actually fought with Chancellor Ba Shan and brought shame on me. If you had won, it's still fine, but you didn't. A Grand Chancellor can't beat a Chancellor. I lost face all because of you. You better return to reflect on yourself. Acknowledged. Ji Yulinwan felt grieved and was about to leave when Qin Mu said, Lord Ji, my fox and that dragon Qilin, please don't make things difficult for them. Ji Yulinwan's heart leaped and heard Empress Dowager laughing. I presume he won't even dare to. That's right, Emperor, you haven't rewarded little divine physician for curing me. Mother, he's already an Imperial Academician, a 6th-ranking official. I can't raise him anymore. He is still young after all. We'll talk about it after a few years, in case the officials of the Imperial Court say I favor him. Little divine physician, tell me more about the interesting stuff when you were little. Ji Yulinwan walked further away, and went out of the palace to return to Imperial College. He had a belly full of anger yet nowhere to vent. The daoist that was guarding Jade Dragon Lake immediately went forward and asked, Grand Chancellor, have the thief been executed? It's all your fault for meddling. All you have to do is to look after the lake, yet you created such a ruckus, making me humiliated. Ji Yulinwan stared at him and shouted, Release that fox and dragon Qilin. The daoist guarding the lake felt extremely wrong. He didn't know what he had done wrong and why Ji Yulinwan got so angry at him, and could only release Hulinga and the dragon Qilin. Grand Chancellor, we had already sent men to capture Wei Yong, but Wei Yong was following Chancellor Ba Shan, and he didn't let us take him away. How do you think? What's Wei Yong's background? He's from Duke Wei's family. Don't look for trouble when there's none. In the Imperial Garden, Empress Dowager chatted with Qin Mu for a while more. Qin Mu then checked her pulse and wrote down a few prescriptions and said, Empress Dowager, you're recovering well, there's no hidden danger left behind. Good. Empress Dowager smiled, thanks for the trouble, little divine physician. Qin Mu stood up to make his leave. Emperor Yangfeng smiled, Dear Minister, hold your step, there's something I want to talk to you about. Qin Mu stopped and Emperor Yangfeng walked to him while waving his hands to let the eunuch and palace maids fall back. He walked out of Imperial Garden while smiling. My Imperial Academician, Cult Master of Heavenly Devil Cult, Abandoned Person of Great Ruins, Disciple of Jade Face Poison King, Minister Qin, sure has a lot of identities. Qin Mu was slightly stunned, and his footsteps subconsciously slowed down. If Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor could know he was the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, Emperor Yangfeng naturally had his ways to know as well. Emperor Yangfeng had already walked far away, and he turned his head back to ask, "Dear Minister, why are you not catching up?" Qin Mu hurried to catch up and smiled, "Your Majesty has a flood of good fortune that fills the heavens." Emperor Yangfeng laughed. Heavenly Devil Cult as the #1 sect of the Devil Path, the #1 sacred ground, for their cult master to be the student of the Son of Heaven, I indeed have a flood of good fortune that fills the heavens. However, it can be a fortune, or it can be a calamity. Dear Minister Qin, do you think it's a fortune, or it's a calamity? Qin Mu smiled, "Your Majesty, if Tao Master of Tao Sect yields to Your Majesty, what position would Your Majesty confer on him?" Emperor Yangfeng said solemnly, "Tao Master of Tao Sect, the head of the righteous path in this world, I will confer him as upper first ranking, allowing him to be called king, inheriting the title generation after generation." Qin Mu then asked, "If Rulai of Great Thunderclap Monastery yields to Your Majesty, what position would Your Majesty confer on him?" Emperor Yangfeng said, "Rulai is best in the Buddhist path, and if he is willing to become an official of the imperial court, I will confer him as upper first ranking, allowing him to be called primogenitor." Qin Mu said, "The 3 sacred grounds of eternal peace, the Emperor will confer the sect masters of Tao Sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery as upper first ranking, calling king, and becoming primogenitor. Heavenly Saint Cult is also a sacred ground, and the cult master of Heavenly Saint Cult had taken the initiative to yield, yet Your Majesty only confer an unpresentable 6th ranking, and still ask if it is a fortune or calamity. Aren't you making the faithful officials and loyalists bitterly disappointed?" Emperor Yangfeng was slightly stunned and nodded his head, "What you said is reasonable. However, I can't promote you immediately, you're still too young after all. If I promote you directly, people would gossip and they would be able to guess your identity." Qin Mu agreed. Emperor Yangfeng remained silent for a moment. "I know there are some grudges between you and Jiu Linwan, and also know you took his junior protector sword away. You're the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, you need to be more magnanimous and don't always make him wear tight shoes. He is placed in Imperial College by me, and if you make him too embarrassed, it won't look good on me as well." Qin Mu felt a little wronged. "Your Majesty, how would I dare to make him wear tight shoes?" Emperor Yangfeng seemed to be smiling yet not smiling. "Didn't you just make him wear tight shoes today, putting him on the spot? You can be at ease. No one would dare to say they surpass Imperial Preceptor in being extremely daring. If I dare to use him, I will also dare to use you. There's no need for any suspicions in your heart. All right, you can fall back." Qin Mu walked out of the palace and felt refreshed. He let out a murky breath and completely relaxed. Since Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had known his identity, he would be slightly worried if Emperor Yangfeng didn't. Now that the Emperor and Imperial Preceptor both knew his identity, he would instead be safe and wouldn't be worried that these 2 big shots would lay their hands on him. Over 10 days later, Qin Mu's West House was piled up with great abundance coins exchanged using the dragon's saliva. Before Chancellor Ba Shan brought Wei Yong and Prince Minue out for experience, he went to his West House to carry away a few bags of coins. Qin Mu didn't mind at all since he was rich. During these few days, he would refine Scarlet Fire spirit pills, as well as another spirit pill that could replenish spirit whenever he was free. When he refined this kind of spirit pill, he would use the hand technique of Buddhism, therefore, the refined spirit pills would give off Buddha voice, which was why Qin Mu called these spirit pills as Spirit Buddha pills. He went to the warehouse to buy herbs these few days and almost bought all the dozens of herbs he needed. There was going to be a large-scale training in Imperial College recently, and scholars were chosen to go to the front lines. Directorates of each hall were to bring scholars to the front lines to quell the rebellion. Qin Mu was also picked by Ji Yulinwan, who said he must definitely go to the front lines, because Qin Mu was a 6th-ranking imperial academician, and had almost the same treatment as the directorates. Therefore Ji Yulinwan also gave Qin Mu a few scholars to let him lead. These scholars were all scholars of the 5 elements realm from scholars' residence, who didn't have much battle prowess. Their cultivations were way inferior to the divine arts practitioners in divine arts residence. In Qin Mu's team, other than him being an imperial academician, there was no directorate. Ji Yulinwan's reason was that since Qin Mu was an imperial academician, and had a high official position, he should lead a team by himself. The scholars that were assigned to Qin Mu may be selectively chosen, the top-notch of scholars' residence, however, they were far inferior compared to the scholars selected from Royalties Park and Divine Arts residence. With strongest practitioners lying everywhere in Imperial College, there was no lack of experts. Ji Yulinwan making Qin Mu lead a team for experience was obviously using public office to avenge his personal grudge. The scholars going with Qin Mu to the front lines were all acquaintances. They were Chen Wanyan, Munkyun Qiu, Yu Qinghong who brought Wolf Slave along, Sai Yunxiang and finally, Qin Yu. However, since Qin Yu was the younger generation of the capital city's Qin family, he had a deep background and found Ji Yulinwan to give him a word, thus he was relocated from Qin Mu's team to another team, which was led by a directorate, avoiding Qin Mu's sure death team. Qin Mu finished refining a furnace of scarlet fire spirit pills and stretched his body. He had been refining pills these few days to ensure that the dragon Chelin would have enough to eat when they reached the front lines, thus he had no time to meet those few scholars. Munkyun Qiu found Chen Wanyan and Yu Qinghong to discuss with them. This time Grand Chancellor made Academician Qin bring us out for experience, and to a place of turmoil. I reckon we won't make it back, and will surely die. We don't even have a divine arts practitioner in our team. Chen Wanyan shook his head. We have. The few of them looked towards him. Chen Wanyan smiled faintly. I have been suppressing my realm these few days, so you guys can be at ease. I can break through anytime, and become a divine arts practitioners of 6 directions realm. Yu Qinghong said, I've heard that the sects that rebelled have already started gathering towards the south, wanting to completely rid Eternal Peace Empire's power in the south. Numerous sects that were active near the capital city had all vanished without a trace. For example, Dragon Rider sect, which had already moved to the south. Now the south of Surging River is completely the territory of the rebel army. With all the rebel sects gathered there, how many divine arts practitioners are there? With you being the only divine arts practitioners, they're absolutely no usefulness. Chen Wanyan frowned. Academician Qin's experience in the martial world is too shallow. He's too young. So how many times has he traveled throughout the martial world? With him leading us, everything points to disaster. No matter how high my cultivation is, I would be helpless. Junior Sister Sai, you haven't been talking. What's your opinion on this? Sai Yunxiang smiled shyly and didn't say a word. Everyone fell silent. Munkyun Qiu sighed. It's better for us to choose 1 or 2 divine arts for escaping from floor of heavenly records. It might just be of use. The day finally came for departure. In front of Hall of Supreme Learning, a few hundred scholars gathered and the directorates inspected their own teams. Ships then flew in one after another and landed in front of Hall of Supreme Learning. The directorates then led their teams to board their own ships. Academician Qin, didn't you hire a ship? Ji Yulinwan walked over with a beam on his face. This journey this time is pretty far, and if you were to walk there, you would need to walk for 10 days and more. You're an imperial academician. Don't tell me you don't even bear to spend this little money. Qin Mu smiled with a calm composure. Thank you, Grand Chancellor, for troubling yourself with our matter. I got nothing but money. Therefore, I have hired a fast ship with a high price, which would reach very soon. The furnace of the ship is forged by me, it's very fast. Chen Wanyan and the rest looked at one another in the eyes and thought, he's indeed petty, even the furnace is made by himself. I reckon it's a small ship. However, he actually knows how to forge artifacts. He has never been to Hall of Divine Craft, so where did he learn to forge from? There's Hall of Divine Craft in Imperial College, and they taught how to forge artifacts and treasures. The directorates of Hall of Divine Craft were also holding official positions in the Imperial Court. The supervisors of the shipyards and the armaments manufacturers were positions the directorates of Hall of Divine Craft must assume. Ever since Qin Mu entered Imperial College, he had not even been to Hall of Divine Craft once, therefore it was impossible for him to learn any knowledge on forging. Not long later, the ship started to fly up and left Imperial College on their own. Yun Q and the rest became anxious as they waited, and suddenly, they saw a dilapidated ship sailing over shakily in the sky and landed in front of Hall of Supreme Learning wobbly. Our ship is here. Qin Mu smiled. Chen Wanyan, Yun Q, Yu Qinghong all frowned hugely. This ship was already filled with holes and air was leaking out from everywhere. Furthermore, the mast of the ship was also broken and there wasn't even a sail. A burly man with bare arms appeared on the ship and had a fierce look on his face. With one look, they knew he wasn't any good person. He was covered in tattoos and he waved towards Qin Mu while laughing. Old brother Qin, I'm late. Qin Mu brought Hu Linga and the dragon Chilean forward with a smile. It's fine even if you're 1 or 2 days late. What happened to your ship? It was still fine the last time I saw you. How did it become like this in just a few days? Don't talk about it. I did another trip and met those bitches of Three Wonders Castle again. They released their insects to harm me, but my speed was too fast. Thus we crashed into the swarm of insects and almost turned my treasure ship into a sieve. Fan Yunxiao chuckled as he looked at Chen Wanyan and the rest. Scholars, when you become officials in the future, please take care of me. I have turned good recently. Yun Q muttered, with this ship being so dilapidated, will it fall apart when we fly into the air? Qin Mu also had the same suspicions. This cloud-chasing pirate ship was simply too worn out and looked like it might fall apart anytime. It won't. Fan Yunxiao patted his chest forcefully and assured, my brothers have already used runes to fortify the ship's body, thus it's extremely durable. Old brother Qin, can you help me forge an iron shell ship when you're free? You can help me refine 2 more furnaces and use black iron to forge the body of the ship. Wood is simply too brittle. Qin Mu pondered for a moment and replied, that would require quite a high price. Just the black iron alone is a pretty large expense. Can you take out that much money? Furthermore, do you have the blueprints? Fan Yunxiao rubbed his hands forcefully and said, after robbing everywhere for these few days. Pooh, after doing business everywhere, I've saved quite a sum of money. If I add all my property together, it should be enough to make an iron shell ship. As for the blueprints, that wouldn't be easy to get. Everyone, please board the ship, we'll talk after we board the ship. Everyone boarded the ship, and Yu Qinghong looked around. The mates of the ship were all covered in tattoos and looked fierce. Some even had scars on their bodies, and some were missing a nose or an eye. With malicious aura leaking out from their bodies, they obviously didn't look like good people. This dilapidated ship gradually rose into the ship, and slowly drove out of the capital city like an old bull pulling onto a dilapidated cart. Everyone looked at this situation, and were even more dejected. Chen Wanyan whispered, the people on this ship aren't good guys. They are villainous people who rob people, and they have extremely high abilities. Most of them are divine arts practitioners. Academician Qin has a shallow experience of the martial world, and I reckon he must have fallen into the bandits' trap. We have to be careful on this journey so that we won't be robbed. Just as he said that, the dilapidated ship suddenly increased its speed and gave off a mournful whoosh as it broke through the air. Violent tremors came as the speed of the ship surpassed the speed of sound, crossing miles of distance in an instant. The few barrels of wine were flung away and exploded mid-air as they got smacked by the air. Everyone immediately stabilized themselves and looked at their surroundings in aghast. They saw this dilapidated ship soon passing by all the ships, which had already set sail a while ago, leaving these ships in the dust. The speed of this ship was so unimaginable. With this speed, they could reach surging river in just a day or two. Qin Mu was long used to it. After all, he was the one who had forged the furnace, therefore, there was no need to be astonished. It's fine, it won't fall apart. Fan Yunxiao consoled everyone and said, I originally thought it would fall apart as well, but after ferrying passengers for a few trips, it has never fallen apart. It's likely not to fall apart this time. Whoosh! A peace deck board was lifted up by the gales and flew backward with a whoosh. Fan Yunxiao was full of confidence, don't worry, it won't fall apart. Second brother, bring a deck up. Bring one more up, another one was blown away. Relax, I'm experienced. Suddenly, the ship passed a raining region. It was currently raining there as the ship passed through the downpour, turning Fan Yunxiao's body all colorful. Hu Linga cried out in astonishment, Old Xiao, your tattoos got washed off by the rain. The other bandits on cloud-chasing pirate ship also had their tattoos blurred by the rain, and there was even a mate who shouted, Big brother, my scar got washed off by the rain. Fan Yunxiao was also slightly embarrassed and said, when you disembark later, we can find painters to paint it back on again. However, we've all turned good, it seems there's no need for us to paint tattoos anymore. Second brother, take off your eye patch, you see, you've scared those few scholars. The second mate took off his eye patch and revealed a perfectly fine eye. Monk Yun Q muttered, the appearance of these bandits doesn't look too reliable. However, Qin Mu was very close to the head of the bandits and took out a computational cannon to consult Fan Yunxiao. Hu Linga found a handkerchief and wiped the dragon's head on Fan Yunxiao's back, and the dragon's head instantly disappeared. Fox, stop fooling around, Fan Yunxiao waved his hand. Hu Linga pouted her lips. I thought they were real tattoos, so they were painted on. Fan Yunxiao gave a dry laugh and muttered, how painful is that? Our body, hair, and skin are given to us by our parents, how can we anyhow draw on them? Qin Mu said, Senior brother Fan, the Sh, by, Qian, Wan in computational canon of supreme mystery is not a problem, however, Yi, Zhao, Jing, Gai, Zi, Rang, Go, Jian, Zheng, Zai, Ji. These numerals are really too huge, what are they used to calculate? Is there a need for such huge numerals? I've also asked Dao Master before, and Dao Master said they were used for immeasurable calculation. Fan Yunxiao said, between Wan and Yi is the Wan system, Wan becomes Yi. After Yi is the Yi system. Yi becomes Zhao, Yi Zhao becomes Jing, Yi Jing becomes Gai. Other than that, there's also no end to division, what's used after a single number is Fen, Li, Hao, Sai, Hu, Wei, Xian, Sho, Chen, Ari, Miao, Mo, Mohu, Kunzun, Shuyu, Shunxi, Tanji, Chana, Liude, Kongshu, Qingjing. What they used are decimals. Fen is 1/10, Li is 100th, so on and so forth. Qin Mu was astonished and asked, then what's Kongshu and Qingjing used to calculate? To calculate the smallest particle in vital qi. Fan Yunxiao continued, the 14th writing of Dao Sword requires runes to be imprinted in the smallest particles of the vital qi. It was impossible to cultivate it without calculation. Qin Mu was dumbstruck and felt his head aching as he looked at the computational canon of supreme mystery. If you forge all kinds of treasures, You also need to use these calculations, and the slightest error could result in a world of difference. Qin Mu acknowledged and exclaimed in admiration, Dao Sek's attainment in algebra sure is extraordinary. He consulted sincerely and Fan Yunxiao told him everything that he knew. Fan Yunxiao had already cultivated to the 5th writing of Dao Sect, and had an extremely high attainment in algebra. Yi, 100 million, Jiao, 1 trillion, Jing, 10 quadrillion, Gari, 100 quintillion, Z, 1 septillion, Rang, 10 octillion, Go, 100 nonillion, Jian, 1 undecillion, Zheng, 10 duodecillion, Zai, 100 tridecillion, Ji, 1 quindecillion. Fen, 1/10th, Li, 100th, Hao, 1,000th, Sai, 10,000th, Hu, 100,000th, Wei, 1 millionth, Xian, 10 millionth, Shou, 100 millionth, Chen, 1 billionth, Ari, 10 billionth, Miao, 100 billionth, Mo, 1 trillionth, Mohu, 10 trillionth, Kunzun, 100 trillionth, Shuyu, 1 quadrillionth, Shunxi, 10 quadrillionth, Tanji, 100 quadrillionth, Chana, 1 quintillionth, Liuda, 10 quintillionth. Kongshu, 100 quintillionth, Qingjing, 1 sextillionth. Part 1 end here.